Hello and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on my playlist, Deadly Destinations, where we visit the sites of terrible events. Sometimes they're murders and sometimes they're mass murders. Today I am coming to you from downtown Fresno, the former home of the very unfortunate Ewell family. I'm going to take you on a little tour of the area and we're going to visit the home where the family met their end. As always, we're going to eat here. This is Dining with Death. I'm Stacy Lee. Let's begin. This is Fresno, California. It's one of the largest cities in the San Joaquin Valley. It is also the county seat of Fresno County. With a population of over 500,000 people, it is the fifth most populous city in California. If you include the surrounding suburbs, there are almost 1 million people here. The original inhabitants of this area were the Yokuts, also known as the Mariposa and the Miwok peoples. The first contact with Europeans was in 1772 when Spanish troops came to the area searching for soldiers. In the 19th century, the Spanish basically enslaved the Yokuts people and forced them to farm for them. Malaria, which was brought by the British fur traders, wiped out a very large portion of the native people here. And then when the gold rush hit in the 1800s, the Native Americans were driven further out of their area and onto reservations. Fresno was founded in 1872 as a railway station of the Central Pacific Railroad. The San Joaquin River flooded on Christmas Eve of 1867, and much of the settlement was wiped out. Some residents rebuilt and others moved to higher ground. In 1885, the city was incorporated, and there are still some very beautiful buildings here from that era. Fresno High School is one of those. The high school still operates today. In the late 1800s, wealthy ranchers began bringing their sheep to Fresno County. At that time, there was a lot of open land, and the climate was perfectly suited for ranching, especially sheep farming. The perfect growing season and climate of this region soon brought in farmers and growers in droves, and the area rapidly grew. This is what downtown Fresno looked like in 1904. I think it's pretty spectacular. A few years after this photo was taken, this beautiful building was constructed. This is Fresno's first and oldest synagogue, Temple Beth Israel, and it stands today. Before World War II, there were many immigrants living in Fresno. The city had Little America, Germantown, Little Italy, and its own version of Chinatown. After World War II, urban development boomed in Fresno, and the farms and orchards were pushed further to the town outskirts. The banking industry found Fresno to be an attractive place to set up some large branches, and by the 1960s, most national banks, like the one you see here, Bank of America, had hubs in Fresno. If you're a fan of the dance world, popping and locking was invented here in Fresno. If you don't know what that means, popping is one style of street dancing, of break dancing, that became very popular in the 1980s. You may have never been to Fresno, but I can promise you, Fresno has been to you. Over 25% of America's crops come from right here in this single valley. The farming and growing industry here produces $17 billion worth of crops each year. Those are figures that I can't really wrap my head around. You think of all the tens of thousands of farms all over the country, and to think that a quarter of everything grown in the U.S. comes from this one valley, that's mind-blowing to me. It's also a little concerning because this year, 2023, has seen very heavy rainfall and a lot of flooding here in the Fresno area, and there has been a loss of crops. So come summer, we might be paying more for things that would normally come out of the San Joaquin Valley because they didn't get grown this year. We'll have to wait and see how much the produce industry is affected by that. Fresno, in my opinion, is kind of a cross between Sacramento and Stockton. It's bigger than Sacramento, but has a lot of the same feel to it. It also has some very rough areas that are more akin to Stockton. Central California is just a vibe. The sun shines differently here. And when I tell you that the rolling hills and the farmlands look like a painting, a postcard, I mean that literally. Look at this, and I promise you, it's even more stunning in person. These are not paintings, my friends. These are photographs. It's really breathtaking to see in person. The people here work hard. There is a large Hispanic population, and many of those residents have long histories of working these farms and orchards. They run them, and they own them, and they are responsible for bringing to you much of the produce you eat every day. Just like any other city in the world, Fresno has a dark side. But here, it's darker than most. Fresno has a 5 rating on the crime index. 100 means a city is the most safe. Fresno only gets a 5. That means it's only safer than 5% of American cities. Fresno has a much higher crime rate than the national average, and that brings its share of struggles. Today we are talking about a very infamous crime. When this story broke in 1992, I was 22 years old and had just started really getting into true crime, which back then wasn't even a thing. We didn't have true crime shows. There was no true crime genre. There wasn't even Forensic Files in 1992. That show didn't start till 1996. All we had in 1992 were daytime talk shows like Donahue and Geraldo, and then, just a month before the murders we will be talking about today, a new show called Dateline premiered. You guys might have seen it once or twice, but this case is really burned into my brain because it happened at a time when I had just discovered what came to be known as the true crime genre. This is Dana Ewell. He was born in January of 1971 to Dale Allen Ewell and Glee Ewell, and the family made its home here in Fresno, California. They made their home right here in this very house, as a matter of fact. We'll talk a little bit more about the location in a bit. Dale Ewell, Dana's father, was a wealthy man. He was an Air Force veteran who went into the airplane sales business after he was released from military service. Dale had grown up poor on a farm in Ohio, and he was determined not to remain poor. He obtained a degree in aeronautics, and he was determined to be wealthy. When he got rich, a friend once asked him, "What do you do for fun?" And Dale answered, "I look at my bank books." Dale was a loyal man and a hardworking man, but he was not a popular man. If you went into a business deal with Dale Ewell, Dale was coming out on top. That's the only way he would have it. He was not well liked by a lot of people who were not his family, but he was an honest man and he was a family man. Glee Ewell, Dana's mother, spent most of her time involved in charity work, and before that, she had worked for the CIA as a Spanish translator. She also sat on the State Bar of California, which is the organization that determines whether or not someone should become a judge. Now, Glee was not raised in a poor family. She was raised in a very rich oil family. She grew up rich, and I have to wonder if marrying her was a calculated move on Dale's part. But at any rate, Dale and Glee Ewell were very impressive people. They raised their family here in this house located in a suburb of Fresno. Even now, decades later, this suburb is a bit farther from downtown than many, so I'm imagining back in the day it was very, very far out of town. You can clearly see this is a nice home, but this is a very usual and normal home. It's not massive in size, it's not fancy at all. Despite having millions and millions of dollars, the Ewells lived a very modest lifestyle. They did not flaunt their wealth, which at the time was about $8 million. That's equivalent to almost $17 million in today's cash. Dana Ewell graduated from San Joaquin Memorial High School in 1989. He had a sister named Tiffany Ann, who was 24 years old in 1992. After high school graduation, Dana decided to pursue a finance degree from Santa Clara University, located in Santa Clara, California. It is also a Jesuit religious school. Dana must have missed out on the classes that taught about the upstanding qualities of the Jesuit belief system, because he was lying his way through not only college, but life. Dana told anyone who would listen that he owned all of the things that actually belonged to his father. Dana told classmates at college that he was a self-made millionaire who made his money starting businesses related to the air travel industry. He told them that he owned not one, but many small airplanes, and that he sold airplanes to wealthy people and corporations alike. In fact, both the Santa Clara, California newspaper and Santa Clara University's yearbook printed stories about Dana Ewell, about how he was so young to have such great success in life, success that made him very, very rich. One of the articles said, "Ewell enjoys the luxuries of life most only enjoy later in life." Classmates remember Dana as smart, but very, very arrogant. This time period was kind of the tail end of the greed is good era, and Dana Ewell embodied that statement. When other college students were dressed in jeans and polo shirts, Dana was dressed in slacks and a tie. He thought very highly of himself, but he had very little work ethic and even less tact. Dale Ewell was known as a man who was ruthless and difficult to deal with, but fair. Dana was just difficult. Still, Dana was living the dream. He was a big shot in his little world, and he was the big man on campus. He had attention from girls because of his persona, and he got away with doing little classwork because everyone was under the impression that he was in college simply for the experience and the degree. He didn't need to be there as he was already loaded. But it was all a lie. About 2 years into Dana's college experience, the lies made their way back home to Fresno, and soon Dana's parents were aware of the secret life he was living. They were absolutely disgusted with Dana. Dale and Glee were salt-of-the-earth people, good people, honest people, who had served their country and had worked hard for what they had. They were shocked and they were embarrassed that their son would act like such a clown, and they began to make plans. Dale Ewell contacted his financial advisor and told him about his son Dana's behavior. Dale instructed his financial advisor to modify his estate plan and remove Dana from some crucial elements of it. Dale also told people they knew that he was cutting Dana off. He was no longer going to support him while he was in school. Dana would have been left penniless and humiliated when people found out that everything he made them believe was a lie. He would be an outcast. He would no longer be the big man on campus, and for Dana Ewell, that just wasn't an option. On Sunday, April 19th, 1992, Dale, Glee, and 24-year-old Tiffany were here in this house enjoying the day together. Dale had just flown home in one of his planes, and Tiffany and her mother awaited his return. It was Easter weekend, Easter Sunday in fact, and though Dana still lived in this house from time to time, he was away that weekend with his girlfriend enjoying the holiday and the break from college classes. No one knows exactly when, but at some point on Easter weekend, Dale, Glee, and Tiffany Ewell were brutally murdered in this house. At about 9 a.m. on the Tuesday after Easter, the maid came here to the house. She walked up the drive and used her key to get inside. But before she entered the house, she realized it looked empty. There were no lights on, and she couldn't hear the TV like she normally would. So when she turned the key and walked into the house, she assumed the alarm would go off because no one was home. Well, the alarm did not go off. Then the housekeeper saw Tiffany's feet in the hallway. As she got closer, she saw Dale Ewell face down in a pool of dried blood, and she ran from the house. The police arrived and spent the next 4 days investigating the crime scene. Their theory was that the killer had been waiting inside the home for the family to return home for Easter Sunday, and when they did, he attacked. Both Dale and Tiffany had been shot only once. Glee had been shot 4 times. All 3 died where they fell. The shooter had then picked up the shell casings and taken them with him, but he'd missed one shot and the bullet was recovered from a wall. Forensic testing revealed the gun used 9mm ammunition, and as police searched the home, they found a box of 9mm ammunition in Dale's closet. The house had been ransacked, but nothing was really taken, so police believed the burglary had been staged, that the real reason for the invasion was to murder the family. Investigators quickly turned their sights onto Dana Ewell, the only surviving family member, the family member who liked to wear flashy clothing and drive nice cars and talk about how rich he was. But there was a problem. Dana Ewell had been not only with his girlfriend at the time of the murders, the entire weekend, but with his girlfriend's father, who was an FBI agent. Dale Ewell's family members began to come forward, and they had some very disturbing information to share. Dana Ewell was fixated on the will. He wanted to know what his father and mother's wills said and how much money he was going to get now that they were dead. When the family financial advisor informed Dale that he wasn't getting anything until his mid-30s, he flew into a rage. The wills directed that Dana was to have his living expenses paid for until age 25. After that, he'd have to wait until he was 35 to collect his inheritance. So there went his Playboy 20s. Dana Ewell was visibly angry, and people were shocked by his behavior. The police began to investigate Dana's friends. One day they were contacted by someone at Dana's college who informed them that Dana's close friend, a young man named Joel Radovich, had suddenly dropped out of school. Joel's professors were stunned by this decision, as Joel had been a dedicated student. Then others who knew Joel reported that he had been acting strangely since the murders. The police began asking around about Joel and Dana's relationship, and they found that this dynamic duo was really into spending Dale Ewell's money. They ate in fancy restaurants, they bought nice clothes, and then after the murders, they started taking helicopter flying lessons. Joel was obsessed with guns, aren't they always, and he bought lots and lots of firearms. All this was despite Joel not having a job or the wealth that Dana had. The police discovered that the two men were communicating via pagers and never by telephone, and that further raised suspicion. The forensic testing on a gun found in the Ewell home came back as the murder weapon. It was traced to a man named Ernest Jack Ponce. Who was Ponce? Joel Radovich's family friend. Ponce admitted buying the gun for Joel a few days before the murders, but said he didn't know how Joel planned to use it. For almost 3 years, the police gathered clues and evidence, but it was never enough to convince the DA to file charges against Dana Ewell or Joel Radovich. During the years the investigation dragged on, the detective working the case, a man named Souza, came up with a great plan. He had Joel Radovich's pager cloned so that every time Joel got a page, the detective got a page. Then Detective Souza went to Dana Ewell's dorm room and knocked on the door and said, "We think Joel Radovich killed your family." He said Dana Ewell's face went white, and not 5 minutes after the police left the dorm, Dana Ewell came into the parking lot, got into his Mercedes, and drove to a payphone. Detective Souza then got a page, meaning Joel's pager had just received a page. During this same time, the police were alerted to the fact that Joel Radovich owned a book on how to make homemade silencers that leave marks on bullets similar to the marks on the bullets found in the Ewell family. Finally, in June of 1995, the dogged investigators had gathered enough evidence. Dana Ewell and Joel Radovich were arrested and put on trial. Dana had been telling friends that he would never be arrested and even said, "The cops are stupid. If they were smart, they wouldn't have taken such low-paying jobs." Well, that didn't work out too well for Dana, did it? He hired this man, defense attorney Ernest Kinney, who died in 2008. Kinney told the media and anyone that would listen, anyone that would interview him, that his client was innocent. However, the prosecution brought Ponce in to testify, and that was pretty much the nail in the coffin. After an 8-month trial, one of the longest in California history at the time, and 11 days of deliberation, both Dana Ewell and Joel Radovich were convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder. In July of 1998, both men received life sentences without the possibility of parole. This is what Joel Radovich looks like today. This is what Dana Ewell looks like today. They are both in an isolated unit reserved for prisoners who kill women and children and family members, because if they were in general population, the other prisoners may take matters into their own hands. You know, perhaps that wouldn't always be such a bad thing, especially for men as evil as Dana Ewell is. Now, as we always do, we eat in our deadly destination. This is Dining with Death. There are a lot of places to eat in Fresno, some very fancy ones at that. There's actually quite a little food scene here. We really like this place called the Annex Kitchen. It's fabulous and has very well-crafted higher-end meals. But as I asked around and talked to a lot of locals, telling them that I wanted to try a Fresno institution, this is where they sent me. This is Colorado Grill. If you look it up, the first thing you'll find is that it's labeled the best burger in Fresno. This little burger joint has been open since 1998, the year Dana Ewell went to prison. They serve burgers and fries, of course. You can get the burgers with chili and pastrami, avocado and bacon, and it is a very good burger. They have a few sandwiches and salads and things like chicken strips, but of course we got burgers. They were big and juicy and a really solid burger joint burger. You know, I always have to get onion rings if the place has them, and they were fantastic, crispy and tasty, and the only thing that would have made them better was some Utah fry sauce. But when you can't have fry sauce to dip your fries and onion rings in, what else works? A milkshake. Colorado Grill is famous for their milkshakes, and I can see why. Real ice cream, mixed perfectly, just so good. And yep, here in the West, we dip our fries and onion rings in the milkshakes. Do you do that where you live? This is a really cute place. I love the retro red booths and the simple menu and the old-fashioned counter. It's an area institution, a favorite spot here in our deadly destination, Fresno, where a long time ago, a greedy and spoiled little boy did the unthinkable to get at mom and dad's money just a few years earlier than he would have had it anyway. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Deadly Destinations. Hit the like button if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you really want to support me, you can join my Patreon. That is very much appreciated. Stay safe and be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.